Hi guys, I'm just going to do you a post-cyclist stretch routine. So I'm dressed in different attire to what I would normally be dressed in to teach yoga, but I just thought it was quite fitting for the actual video that I'm taking. So there is just a couple of things, well, one thing that you'll need, two things actually, a mat and a strap. If you haven't got a yoga strap like this, then you can always use a tie or a belt from a dressing gown or a leather belt, but so long as it's got no stretch in it, it needs to be resistant, so you can pop it around a foot and pull on it without it stretching. So grab yourself something to use, have your strap just at the side of your mat, and then bring yourself down onto the floor. Bring your sit bones into the centre of the mat, and then bring your back to the floor, the feet in towards the bum, and then just feel that lower back being pushed into the mat. So we're keeping a little bit of contraction in that belly. Hands come down by the sides of the body, the gaze stays up to the ceiling. So this post-yoga for cyclists is all about stretching, not necessarily about strength or stability. We're trying to get into those muscles that have been contracted whilst you've been on your bike. So only really do this practice after you've done your cycling, not before. So feet hip width apart, knees hip width apart, and I'm going to get you to roll up and down that spine, bringing your hips away from the floor, but keeping your shoulders plugged into the mat. So as you take a breath in, start to curl up from the lower part of the spine, squeezing the bum as you lift those hips higher. Try not to let the knees splay apart. Bring that chest towards the chin and maybe tuck that chin in slightly. Create that space at the back of the neck, and then slowly bring that body back down to the floor. See whether you can feel each vertebra coming down towards the mat from the upper part of the spine all the way down to the tailbone. We'll do this 2 more times. You push into the feet, you start to roll up through the lumbar spine. Then you start to roll up through the thoracic spine, the space between the ribs. And then you start to bring the weight into the cervical spine, around the neck, squeezing the bum as you lift. And then as you lower, each vertebra coming down one at a time. Bringing that tailbone back to the mat. So we'll take this 1 more time. Make sure you're pushing into the big toe and the little toe of both feet, the ball and the heel of the foot, taking that body from neutral into extension and then bringing it back down towards the floor. Obviously, when you're on a bike, you're quite often curled over in a flexed place, so that takes that body into extension. When that bum comes to the floor, bring the outside of the right ankle onto the top of the left thigh. Then squeeze that left knee in towards the body. Now your choice can be to use a strap here if you wish, and take that strap around the back of that left thigh. Use your right elbow to push that right knee out. Or you can just interlace the fingers around the back of that left thigh and still use that right elbow to push that right knee out. We're trying to squeeze that left knee in as close as we can and push that right knee further away. And this will get into the outside of that right hip, into that glute medius, into that piriformis muscle. Then lift that left leg to try and get into that lower hamstring on that left side. So into the back of that knee, into the calf, the Achilles, into the base of the foot, stretching the posterior chain of muscles on that left leg. Keep bringing the left toes back to the shins, pushing the left heel away, remembering still to push that right knee out to the side. Plug those shoulders into the mat to create the space on the front side of the chest. So remember, either using a strap around the leg or just holding onto the leg with interlaced fingers. Then bring that left foot back down to the floor, the right foot to meet the left. Then bring the outside edge of the left ankle onto the top of the right thigh. Bring your right knee in towards the body. Either thread the hands or the strap around the back of that right leg. Use the left elbow to push the left knee out. Both sets of toes back towards the shins. Squeeze the right knee in a little closer if you can. Plug the shoulders into the floor. And then maybe straighten that right leg to now get into that hamstring on that right side. Toes of the right foot drawn back, heel of the right foot pushed up to the ceiling. Getting into the outside of that left hip, the glute medius and the piriformis muscle, and stretching that hamstring at the back of that right leg. One more breath here. And then release that right foot back down to the floor, bring the left foot to meet the right. Bring the arms out to a T shape, push the shoulder blades into the mat, bring the knees up to stack over the hips, the feet in line with the knees, bring the knees and ankles together and take the knees over to your right side, the gaze over to your left side. Maybe take that right hand onto the top of the left knee just to encourage that left knee down a little further. Gaze towards that left hand, and this will help that rotation of the spine. So we're rotating through the lumbar, between the lumbar and the thoracic, rotating the cervical spine in the opposite direction. Hold it for one more breath here. And then release that right arm out, bring the knees back in, knees over the hips, and then take the knees over to your left side. Your gaze over to your right side. Still try and keep your right shoulder towards the floor. Maybe your left hand comes onto the top of that right knee and the gaze is towards those right fingertips, and just feel that body stretch down the waist of the right side through that lower back, that rotation of the waist. So rotation is important. If you need to look behind you to check with traffic, obviously having good rotation is good for keeping us safe when we're crossing roads. Bring those knees back into the centre. Bring the knees in towards the chest. So taking a hold of your strap or your belt or your scarf, whatever you're using as that tool, bring that strap over your right foot, straighten your left leg out to the end of the mat, and then straighten your right leg so the heel pushes up to the ceiling. Toes back to the shins, so we stretch through the base of the foot. Bring your left hand out to the side. Then slowly, with the strap in the right hand, bring that right leg out to the side. Bring it down as far as you can without that left hip lifting. Taking it into a groin stretch on that right leg. So the hips stay nice and neutral. The stretch comes on that inner thigh. We keep the shoulders plugged down to create the space in the front side of the chest and to keep that spine neutral. Keep pushing that lower back into the floor. Hold it for one more breath here. Then slowly bring that leg back up to the centre. Take a hold of the strap with the left hand. Bring the right hand out to the side. Then without lifting this right hip, take that leg over to the left. So it won't go too far, but it will get into the outside of that IT band on the right thigh and into those hamstrings on that right leg. So we've got a stretch of the posterior chain of the muscle. We've got a stretch of the lateral side of the thigh. Bring it back into the centre. Then swap the feet. So taking the left foot into the strap. Bringing the right leg down, straight on the mat. Take the hand of the left onto the strap, your right hand out to the side as your counterbalance, and then take that left leg out to the side. So we're getting into those internal sides of the thighs, the medius side of the thigh. Try not to let this right hip lift. Keep it nice and grounded, even if you have to use that right hand to hold it down. Or keep that right hand out to the side, shoulders relaxed, plugged into the mat. Space through the front side of the chest. Keep pushing that lower spine into the mat. One more breath here. And then raise that left leg back up. Take a hold of the strap in the right hand. Left hand comes out to the side without the left bum cheek lifting. Take the left leg over to the right side. Feel that stretch on the outside, lateral side of the thigh. Maybe in that hamstring on that left leg also. Try not to lift that left bum cheek away from the floor. Then bring those legs back to the centre. Take a bend in both knees. Release the strap to the side. Take a hold of the crease of the knee. And then just rock up and down a few times on the back. Up to seated once. Up to seated twice. Massaging those erector spinal muscles. And when you come up the third time, make your way into a tabletop position. Place the hands on the floor, knees on the floor. Untuck the toes. So we're going to do a little bit of pelvic tilting here. So try not to move the shoulders, but push those hands into the mat to support the shoulder sockets. We're just going to be moving the lower part of the spine. So feel like you're lifting that tailbone up and you're dropping the belly down towards the mat. That takes it into an anterior tilt. Quite a weak space to be. And then bring that belly so it starts to lift towards the ribs and the tailbone tucks down towards the floor. Takes us into a posterior tilt. And take it between the two places. So anterior tilt is when the tailbone lifts and the belly drops. And a posterior tilt is when that belly lifts and the tailbone moves down towards the floor. Keep that going a couple of times. Just noticing my shoulders aren't moving. It's all in that lower lumbar spine. I'm keeping the upper part of the body really still. Disassociating the bottom to the top. Then when you've done that a couple of times, try and find that neutral space. So then it comes with a nice straight back, the tailbone's not lifted or dropped, and we squeeze the ribs and hips towards each other like we're tethering them together. So this is a good anatomical space for that pelvis. Then bring your right foot in between the hands. Set your left knee back a little further. Drop into the hips. Try and bring your right knee over that right ankle, as though the right knee is stacking over the toes. The left hip is pushing down into the mat, so we're getting a stretch into that left hip flexor. We're contracting through the right hip flexor. So we're feeling maybe that stretch into the front side of the thigh a little bit here. Holding it just for a couple of breaths. Then you start to walk the hands back towards that left knee and you start to straighten that right leg as much as you can. Come onto the heel of the right foot, bring the right toes back to the shins. Try and keep the hips in the centre. So we're getting into those hamstrings, the calves, the Achilles, the base of the foot, all the way up to the toes. Maybe getting into that lower back a little bit, into those QL muscles that attach the ribs to the hips. Hold it here just for another couple of breaths. Feel that stretch. Maybe you can't stretch that leg quite so far. Maybe you've got a little bend in that knee. That's fine. So long as you can feel a stretch through that back of the leg, you're doing what your range of movement is allowing you to do. Then start to walk those hands back towards that right foot. Heel toe that right foot out to the side. Turn the toes of the right foot off the mat. Bring your right hand onto your right knee and push that knee out to the side, coming onto the knife edge of that right foot, the outside edge. So we're trying to get a stretch on the inside of that right thigh now, into those hips. Maybe need to walk that left hand a little further forward just to support the body a little more and not put no pressure on that left wrist. Just holding for a couple of more breaths here. And then take a tuck under of your back toes. Lift up your back knee. Then come onto the outside knife edge of that left foot. And then drop that left hip down towards the floor. Hug that right knee in towards the body. Feel that stretch on the outside of that right thigh. left hip drops down. So we're getting IT bands here, so the lateral side of the thighs, squeezing it in as much as you can to feel that stretch. If it's uncomfortable to be on the hand flat, come onto the knuckles. One more breath here. Then bring yourself back around, come onto the toes of the back foot, heel toe the right foot back into the middle, drop the back knee, bring the right knee back to meet the left, take it all on the other side. So bring your left foot through, walk that right knee back, then sink the hips nice and low. Left knee comes over the left ankle and further, almost though it's stacking over the left toes. Back toes are untucked, we're sinking those hips as low as we can go. So stretching down that right hip flexor this time, contracting the left hip flexor. Feel that stretch happening in those muscles, using the breath to try and let those muscles relax a little further. Long breaths in, long breaths out. Then start to walk the hands back towards that right knee and straightening that left leg as much as you can, keeping the hips in the centre. Bringing the left toes back to stretch the base of the foot, the Achilles, the calves, the lower hamstrings. Straightening the legs if you can, or just bending if that is your range of movement. So long as you can feel that stretch down the back of that leg. Keep lifting maybe with the tailbone, so feel like you're lifting that more, that gets that hamstring a little deeper if that leg's already straight. And then start to walk those hands back towards that left foot, heel toe the left foot out to the side, maybe just bring your right hand a little further forward, and then left hand onto the left knee, push that left knee out, come onto the knife edge of that left foot. Turn and twist through the waist, turn the shoulders to the left, getting into the inside of that left thigh, the groin, the inner adductors. And then take a tuck of the toes of the right foot, lift up the right knee, let that right outside edge of the foot come to the floor, drop the right hip down, hug the left knee, squeeze it in, and feel that stretch on both the outside of both thighs. IT bands, maybe in the hamstrings a little bit, certainly on the outside of that right hip, into that glute medius, into that TFL muscle, the little muscle that connects to the IT band, which is a particularly strong band of muscles. Hold it here, another couple of breaths. Then make your way back to the front, onto the toes of the back foot, heel toe the left foot back into the centre, drop the back knee, left knee back to meet the right, tuck under the toes, send them to the back of the mat, find a plank position, then paddle the feet as you lift up the hips to what we call a downward facing dog. Feet hip width apart, hands shoulder width apart, paddling the feet, letting the Achilles, the calves and the hamstrings feel a dynamic stretch. And then when you're ready, bring those heels to stillness, encourage them back towards the floor. Your breath in, bring yourself forward to plank and just let the hips drop down towards the floor and keep the toes tucked. Squeeze the shoulder blades together and then take it back to a down dog, lifting the hips and squeezing the heels back. We'll do 2 more of those dynamic movements. The breath in comes forward and drops the hips, squeezes the shoulder blades together, creates space in the chest. Breath out, lift the hips back to down dog. One more time, come forward through plank, let the hips drop, make the shoulders stuck over the heel of the hands, and then take it back to down dog, lifting the hips, squeezing the heels back. Come forward to a plank position, make your way slowly to the floor, either dropping the knees and bringing yourself down that way, or slowly releasing down to the floor with control and straight body. Bring the chest to the floor, the hips to the floor, untuck the toes. Bring your right foot in towards the bum, bring your right hand behind to grab a hold of the right ankle. Bring the right toes back to the shins Bring the heel of the right foot into the bum. Then push those hips into the mat so you feel that stretch on the front of the right thigh. The more you push the hips down and the more you squeeze that right foot in, the more you'll feel the stretch into that hip flexor. Turn and let that shoulder relax back so we create some space in the chest. Hold it just for another couple of breaths. Then release that right foot back to the mat. Bring your right hand out to the side, hand at shoulder height. Then roll over onto your right side. Bring your right ear to the mat. Then take your left foot over to that right side of the mat. So we get a stretch through the front side of the chest on the right side. And we feel that stretch down that left hip flexor. Again, opening that front side of the body. One, where we normally in flexion, we need to help open up that front side if we spent long hours on a bike. One more breath in this position. Then roll back over onto your belly. Bring your right hand back by the side of the chest. Take a bend into your left knee. Take a hold of the ankle on that left foot. Bring the left toes back to the shins, bring the left heel into the bum, then push those hips into the mat. Squeeze the bum to push the hips further, and then feel that stretch down the front side of that thigh, the quad muscle. So we've done hamstrings, we've done groin, we've done IT bands, we've done outside of the glutes. So really worked all around that pelvis to help release any pressures that you have in your lower back. Keep pushing those hips down, that left heel towards the bum. One more breath. Then release that left foot to the mat. Bring the left hand out to the side, palm face down, shoulder height. Roll onto your left side, pushing into the right hand. Then take that right foot over to the left. Open up through that front chain of muscles, down that right hip flexor, into that left pectoral muscle. Really working the body in the opposite direction to where you've probably spent miles on a bike. Keep breathing that left ear to the mat. If that's a struggle, maybe you just need to use a pillow under this left side or a block if those heads haven't got that flexibility to come to the floor. One more breath here. Then roll back onto your belly. Bring that left hand back by the side of the chest. Tuck under the toes. Bring those chests back towards those thighs. Widen the knees. Bring the big toes together. Bring the sit bones to the heels. Reach forward with the hands, forehead to the mat, into what we call child's pose. Really good pose for stretching those lower backs. Starts to help with the stretch through the armpits and the sides of the waist. And we help get that little bit of mobility through those hips, bend through those knees. Walk the hands over to your right side of the mat. Bring your left hand on top of your right hand. Keep your left sit bone pushing back towards the left heel, and that chest sinking to the inside of that right thigh, taking some lateral flexion through that spine. Then walk the hands over to the opposite side, left side of the mat, right hand on top of the left, right sit bone back towards that right heel, and sink that body into that left thigh. Relax through the shoulders, let the forehead come to the mat. Then come back into the centre, take a breath out in neutral spine. Then come back up onto your hands and knees. Feed the legs around to the front of the mat, the bums into the centre. Toes back to the shins, remove flesh from under the sit bones. Grow tall through the spine, elongate through that spine. Bring the hands down by the sides of the body. Breathe in, raise up the arms. Then as you breathe out, just fold from the hips, just bringing those hands to wherever they reach. It may be the shins, it may be the ankles, it may be the feet. But use the breath. The breath in elongates the spine, and the breath out, we draw the belly back and we contract these hip flexors to help ourselves fold over those legs, just holding it in this forward fold for a couple of breaths. Again, getting into these lower hamstrings, stretching behind the knees. It might be that your knees are quite high, but just try and encourage them down as close as you can to the floor. Even if that means coming up with the chest a little, that's fine. But try not to roll that back. Try and keep the chest pointing forward and the gaze lifted, but work on getting those knees a little closer to the mat. Walk the hands then back up, take a bend into your right knee and bring that right foot over the left thigh. Walk that right foot a little further away. Take a hold of the right knee, keep the spine tall, then squeeze that knee in towards the belly. And you should feel a stretch around this piriformis muscle, this outside of the right glute. Keep active toes of the left foot, keep squeezing them back to the shins. Keep squeezing that right knee in a little closer. One more breath, squeezing this knee in. Then heel toe that right foot back towards the outside of the left thigh. Hug that left elbow around that right knee. Bring your right hand behind. Breathe in, elongate the spine. Breathe out, rotate, twist. Let the right shoulder come back, the left shoulder come around. Feel the rotation through the waist. Both sit bones are grounded. Stay neutral to the short edge of the mat. And it's just the waist that's rotating. The shoulders come around with that rotation of the waist. Maybe you want to turn the head to the back of the room to get some rotation through that cervical spine to help when you come to having crossing roads. So you can get that rotation to look behind you. Then bring the shoulders back to the center, release the right leg back out. Take a bend this time into your left knee. Bring that left foot away from that right outside of the right thigh. Take a hold of that left knee with hands interlaced. Grow tall through the spine, relax through the shoulders, squeeze that left knee in. Feel the stretch on the outside this time of the left hip. Just noticing whether one side feels tighter than the other. We always have a dominant side, a stronger side. The more dominant the side is, the tighter it will feel. The weaker the side, the more looser and more flexible it will feel, and you'll find it harder to be more stable in balances. Squeeze that left knee in a little closer. One more breath. Then heel toe that foot back towards the side of the right thigh. Hug the right elbow around the left knee. Bring your left hand behind. Elongate on the inhale. Twist on the exhale. Maybe turn that gaze back. Help with that rotation through that cervical spine. Long breaths in, long breaths out, encouraging the left shoulder back and the right shoulder around. Pelvis stays neutral, both sit bones grounded. One more breath here. And then release yourself back to the front. Release the legs. Give those legs a little bit of a paddle. Come to a seated position. Cross legs or on the knees. Just place the hands on top of the thighs. Take a close of the eyes. And just take a moment to scan that body from the top of the head down to the fingertips, down to the toe tips. How does that body feel for you, having ridden however many miles you've done? And having taken those stretches at the end of your bike ride, just knowing that you've done your body good. Now these post-stretch classes are only to be done at the end of your rides rather than at the beginning. I will come back to you with some stability work that you can use before you get on a bike or day before you get on a bike, and some spinal articulation. So I hope you've enjoyed the practice. Feel free to try it. And I hope that it benefits you in your biking in the future. It will certainly prevent you from injuries and allow you to do your chosen sport for longer. Thanks guys, have a good day.